Well, Peter van Kets will be giving the first speech or the first talk at the BizNews Investment Conference from the 1st to the 4th of March. And, well, Peter, good to be talking with you. I presume you're at home in East London?
Yes, I am, Alec, and it's quite amazing when I get introduced as a person that lives in East London. Generally speaking, people give me kind of a glaze. They get that like glazed look over their eyes because PE and East London are somehow seem to be the same city when we're thinking of the Eastern Cape.
Yeah, and very different cities, as we
Yeah,
well
very,
know.
very different. Yeah.
But you're close to the beach, you're close to nature, and from
Yes.
everything I've read about you and know about you, that appears to be your driving force. But maybe let's just go back a little bit before you became a full-time adventurer, and you're going to tell us about that in a moment. You were actually a school teacher. What drew you to that?
So, yeah, I think that teaching has always been an important part of my life. And I mean, I suppose, Alec, if you had to ask me when I was at school, what were my chances of becoming a teacher, I would probably say zero. But, life morphs and things change and you grow. And I really became interested in education. And then I put my heart and soul into it. When I finished school, I spent about 8 years traveling around the world. I did 2 years in the army. And then, obviously I changed quite tremendously during that time. And then I started studying teaching. And then I went and taught at SACS down in Cape Town. And then when I moved up here to East London, I taught at a little school called Lillyfontein School. And set that up as an adventure-based school, the high school section and junior school section eventually. And it's going amazingly at that school now. And I left teaching in 2005.
Adventure-based?
Yeah, so basically, Alec, I think a lot of big schools, and excuse me if you're watching this or listening to this, and you're really into rugby and cricket, and it's amazing and it is good. But I think that there are so many young people that fall through the cracks in a system that are, they're not good rugby players, they're not good cricket players or hockey players or tennis players, but they are good at something. And adventure just really creates an opportunity for people to shine. And it builds confidence, it builds resilience, and obviously those are such an important part of our lives as we get into our adult lives and our business lives and our corporate and executive worlds. Yeah.
For those of us outside of the adventure genre, and you're going to tell us more about some of your travels. And in fact, what got me onto Peter in the first place, I'm going to just bring up this, see if I can put it on. There we go. There's Peter's book, The Eighth Summit, which I've been trying to find copies of, Peter. I think you need to speak to your marketing guys. It's a brilliant book. And I don't say that lightly. There are, I think, something like over 100,000 books that are published every year. Of those, no more than 100. So it's a very small fraction are actually worth reading, because a lot of those books are pushed out as marketing materials and so on. But yours opened up new. It took the scales from my eyes on the whole area of adventuring. From your side, though, before we talk about that very first journey, or your incredible journey of rowing across the Atlantic, had you always been pulled towards that? Were you always wanting to do something different? And maybe as a boy, were you a scout? Were you a rover? What shaped you in this direction?
Alec, I don't want to sound cliched, but I think all of us have a sense of adventure in our lives. And I think personally, for myself, I grew up in Southeast Africa, Namibia, and as a child, it was quite a fantastic place to spend your days as a young boy. And we used to have all sorts of weird gangs. We used to go and collect snakes and scorpions and play with them, and who could find the biggest scorpion. And so I'm starting off really, really small here. So there was always this excitement of, I want to get home, but then I want to get out into the bush and I want to go and explore and I want to go and find and I want to go and and discover and build little dens and just be this adventurous kid, you know. And then from there, it just grows into something bigger. Now we are, all of a sudden, we're going and doing holidays, or we're going camping in the mountains, or we're going for 5-day hikes, you know, along the coast. And then eventually it's, you know, just things get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happened with me in my life. Until I got to the stage where I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to continue on this trajectory, I'm going to have to do this full time, because there's no other time to do anything else. And so you start becoming a little bit creative, and all entrepreneurs will know what I'm speaking about. So, you know, even being a professional adventurer requires a certain amount of entrepreneurial skills, and I think you just grow and you make things. You know, if you're really passionate about what you do, and that also sounds cliched, but it's real. You can really put anything together, and that is the spirit of adventure. You know, those olden days explorers like Scott and Amundsen and Shackleton, they were all amazingly famous and wonderful. And I think that over the years, modern explorers and adventurers, the kind of national backing that they used to have so much has kind of fallen by the wayside. And I think because of that, because there's not so much attention given to, you know, big modern explorers, that people in general have kind of lost that real sense of adventure, you know, because they're not, you know, in grips with it the whole time. I mean, Scott's expedition to the South Pole and Shackleton's as well. Shackleton's an amazing story, gripped the world for years, like really, really, yeah, had everybody. I guess there was no like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or anything like that then. So they really relied on the story when they got back. But the the sense of adventure that people had in those days was profound, and I think that a lot of us have kind of lost that over the years. And I've been just so privileged, Alec, to be a South African that's been able to go and experience such wonderful expeditions. When I say wonderful, I've got to just warn you that most of them are generally extremely difficult. And if you had to say to me, "Are they a lot of fun?" I would go, no, not a whole lot of fun, but you know, finishing them is that sense of satisfaction is huge. So adventure, I think, is the basis of all of our lives, of all of our businesses. Those people that are entrepreneurs. I think there are quite a few entrepreneurs coming to the BizNews conference. Looking forward to meeting them and sharing some of my stories with them as well. They all understand what adventure is. It's an integral part of their business.
Well, I suppose the obvious question is, how do you fund all of this? And you've got to be entrepreneurial to make it to make sure that you can
Sure,
afford to
of
row
course.
across the Atlantic and
Sure,
to walk to the South Pole and so on.
sure. So therein lies the trick. Like, I mean, like, if you want to do a big expedition, they're very expensive. Any of the polar expeditions are like just really expensive, mainly because they're just difficult to get to. So basically, there's one of three ways that you can do it in. You can get a corporate or a sponsor to sponsor your expedition, and you provide them with imagery and coverage for their brand coverage. And that's one way. So let's give you an example. For my solo row, I was sponsored by Liberty, and they put media watch companies onto me, and my return to them was 60 times what they put in. So whatever they put in, they managed to get their brand exposures 60 times more than what they paid for. So
That's because you're doing crazy things. You're rowing across the Atlantic, which not many sane or even insane human beings would be looking to do. So I get why a guy sitting in an office is saying, okay, we'll pay for him to do it.
it's not as easy as that. I mean, the person that I met with Liberty was a guy, Rex Tomlinson. Actually, he grabbed, as I was introduced to him, and you'll love this story. And I walked into, I don't know if you've been to Liberty's offices down in Braamfontein. I walked into his office and he grabbed my arm. I can't tell you exactly on air what he said to me, but he told me that I was one crazy dude. And they were really excited about chatting to me. And 10 minutes later, I had my sponsor, and that was it. Done. Boom. Signed, sealed. But it is not always like that. It's a grind these days, especially now. I'm planning a big expedition for a couple of years' time, and it's a grind. It's not easy. So that's the one way. Alec, the second way is to get a television commission. So you get a Discovery Channel, or one of the big channels. I haven't managed to get my way into Netflix yet. There are lots of henchmen at the door. And then the third one is to actually take people with you as part of an expedition that would pay for the experience. So it's not something that I particularly enjoy doing. We did it up in the Arctic and the North Pole, where we took 4 people, and they put a certain amount of money in. So like really wealthy people put a certain amount of money in, and that covered the cost of the expedition. And they had a 6-week experience that no humans will ever be able to get again. So, and that's the kind of thing that you have to pay for. I mean, it is expensive in any case. Yeah.
Creative thinking,
Yes.
in other words, you've got to look
Yes.
at things, each expedition very differently.
Yeah.
But let's go through your adventures, the ones you write about in the 8th summit.
Yes.
The first one where um, you were, well, you tell us the story of
Okay.
how you got to want, or to drawn into
Yeah.
rowing across the Atlantic for the first time.
So I was busy planning an expedition from Madagascar to South Africa. I wanted to kayak across that Mozambique Channel. And it's about 380 kilometers. And that would be an unsupported kayak, so non-stop. It's quite dangerous, obviously, because there's lots of current, and we'd have to have chosen the weather well. In any case, so I was busy planning that, and I was paddling out at one of my favorite surf spots, Queensbury Bay, just up the road here, with a good friend of mine, Hannes Venter, and we were just paddling out, talking, joking, having fun. And as we got to the back line, was a person that I'd seen many times before, but had never actually met. And Hannes introduced me. He said, hey, Pete, this is Billy. Billy wants to row across the Atlantic Ocean. And Pete, Billy, this is Pete. He's busy planning a kayaking trip across the Mozambique Channel. You guys have got lots to talk about. And off we went. So we started talking, and Billy and I started chatting. And eventually he said to me, Pete, I'm actually looking for a partner to come and do this. It was the Atlantic rowing race, the Woodvale Atlantic rowing race at the time. Would you like to do it with me? So I said to him, Billy, yeah, I would. But my wife, Kim, was pregnant at the time. She was 7 months pregnant. And I said, there's no ways I can go home now and say, hey, Kim, you know what? I've got this great idea. I want to go and row across the Atlantic. I said, so let's wait. So for the time being, no. I'd love to, but let's wait. Maybe when baby's born, Hannah would be born, then things would be different. In any case, I said, phone me 6 months later. And 6 months later, he phoned me. And he said, Pete, I'm still looking for somebody. And I said, okay, let me go and chat to Kim. And, Kim's a super important part of my team. And we had this long conversation, difficult conversation, but a good one. And I ended up phoning Billy back and saying, Billy, I'm in. And so we started planning and preparing for that. It's a 5,500 kilometer race from La Gomera in the Canary Islands. So it's just off the coast of Morocco, across the southern part of the North Atlantic Ocean to Antigua in the Caribbean. So it's kind of in the middle of the Caribbean islands. So non-stop, unsupported, unassisted, which means nobody's assisting you, so you don't get onto any other vessel. You don't see anybody. Nobody can give you food or water or anything. So you completely are alone for that journey. And so in that conversation with Billy, we decided that we would like to win the race. If we were going to go and do it, we'd like to win it. If you're going to put that much effort in and it is a race, then, let's go break a few records and let's go race it. And that's what we did. We got Tim Noakes as part of our team, and he helped us just with a little bit of, physical training, some plans and some food plans. That was before the whole Banting thing became quite famous. And we started training. We spent 2 years training, getting our boat. And And then we went and rode the race, hour and a half on. So this is how we rode, an hour and a half on, hour and a half off, 24 hours a day. So there wasn't a second during that row that one of us wasn't rowing. And we did that for 50 days in 12 hours. And we won the race. There were 23 boats taking part in the race from all over the world. And it was an incredible amount of suffering and struggle and sacrifice to get there. But I suppose any good story comes hand in hand with those three things. And, we were mentally and physically prepared for those challenges that we faced. And it was because of those things that we were able to win that race and break the world record for that particular race. So that's how it all started, like the big expeditions, that's how it all started. And then straight after that row, I remember meeting up with Kim on the quayside in Antigua. And as I got in, it's a long time to be out at sea with another man on a 7-meter rowing boat. I grabbed Kim, I put my arms around her, and I said, Kim, if I ever say I want to do something like that again, you've got to stop me. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, Pete, don't worry, I absolutely will. And so
And the story continues because that certainly wasn't the development. But just to ask you on that before we move away from it, this race, is it still held every year?
in fact, if you want to, it's quite interesting. The guys are busy. I was watching a little video this morning. The guys are busy arriving in Antigua as we speak. Literally, the 5th boat has come in. And so the first boat came in about 2 days ago. And, over the next few weeks, the boats will start arriving. So
is there a big prize at the end of the day?
No, there's no prize. No.
There's no prize.
No, there's no prize.
What is the motivation then to do it?
I suppose it's quite a big challenge. It's quite unique rowing across an ocean. There are so many things that happen to you while you're out at sea and while you're rowing that are just so beautiful. The connection with the planet, the connection with the ocean, stars, just everything is absolutely, it's sublime. And I suppose the big physical challenge is amazing. And if you have the inclination and if you've got the time and you can actually put it together, it's something really worth going to do if, the sea is your thing, which it is mine. So, do the guys win money winning the comrades? I'm not sure.
Same kind of thing then.
I think it's like
challenge.
a medal, so I think there's an element of ego in that as well. I mean, I hate to say that, but it is nice winning a race and breaking a world record. There's a certain amount of pride that you can associate with, doing something like that. And, as a professional adventurer, that is something that ticks many, many, many boxes. What a wonderful adventure it is. But as I said, it's like lots of suffering, and many things that big CEOs that CEOs of big corporates would experience. Away from home for a long time, long hours, sleeplessness. Working with teams of people. There's definitely a cross-pollination of experiences with being an adventurer and running big teams.
And there you were in a team. You were a duo. There were 2 of you rowing, and despite saying that your wife Kim, who you can tell us about, she herself is an adventurer. So we'll get onto that in a moment. Yes. Telling her that she should stop you from doing it again. You did go and do it again, but this time doing it on your own.
Yeah. So when I finished that first row, it kind of dawned on me that no African had ever rowed any ocean solo before, and that kind of needed to be done. And I suppose it's like saying to somebody who's just given birth naturally, would you like to do that again straight away? They'd say, no, whatever happens, no, I don't want to do that again. But then over time, things wear off, and you start just remembering the amazing things that happen, and you start yearning for that adventure again. And that's what happened with me. So I decided to put something together and see if we could, get the right sponsors and build a boat to do the solo row. And 2 years later, there I was on my new boat that I named Nyamazela. It's a Xhosa word, which means endurance or perseverance. And I took part in the same race. That race was then the Woodvale Transatlantic Rowing Race. It is now the Talisker Ocean Challenge. Now it happens every year, but in those days it was happening every second year.
You didn't win that one.
No, I didn't win that one. And actually, that race was quite an epic race because it changed the nature of ocean rowing. And one of the participants that took part in the race built this boat that would really be able to utilize the wind to an incredible degree. And so it almost became unbeatable to, so I was rowing a rowing boat, like literally a rowing boat with a little cabin on it, which made it still rowing. And they built a boat that was designed to catch as much wind as possible without actually putting a sail up. So the person that won the solo row beat. There were 4-man teams, there was an 8-man team, there were 2-man teams, and he beat all of them by 2 weeks, which kind of gives you, and I was rowing hour and a half on, hour and a half off, 24 hours a day. I did that for 76 days on that row. And I think from then, I mean, there's just been such turmoil in the rowing world at the moment, from those people who like to say that I've rowed it, and those people who say that I've used, this craft to row it across. So it has changed, it has morphed. But I'm happy, I rowed every single stroke on that race as if I was going to win the race. I came second. I think I was 12th boat. There were 52 boats that year that raced. So 12th out of all the 2-man and 4-man boats is not bad.
Extraordinary. Yeah. And what a story! If in the book, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there was a lot that you explain that happened during that time. But the one thing that has stayed with me, practically speaking, I'm not sure if you saw the Netflix movie My Octopus Teacher. Well, after that, I certainly never ate calamari again. And after reading your book, there's no way I'll have a Dorado ever again. Tell us that story.
Alec, it was one of the most incredible experiences. We think we know the animal kingdom, and we haven't even touched the surface. And I had one storm. Let me tell you this quick story. I had one storm during the solo row, and it lasted 6 days, 5 nights. And I was on parachute anchor for that time because the wind and everything was against me. If it was behind me, I would have done something else. And so straight after that storm, I noticed Dorado underneath my boat. And I didn't quite know. I knew that they were coming to get shade there, and they use it as refuge and a place to hunt from. So they hunt mainly flying fish. That's what they eat. And straight after the storm, as I was rowing, every sunrise and sunset, I would see these fish these Dorado, jumping 20, 30 meters away from my boat, out the water, splashing, making noise. And every now and then I would hear them, and they'd come and hit my rudder hard, bam, bam, bam. And I just really didn't understand. And I was on a carbon boat, so it makes a lot of noise, It sounds like steel. And as the weeks went past, this would happen every sunrise and sunset. These fish would jump out the water. And as the weeks went past, this would happen. They would get closer and closer and closer to the boat until I could literally see their eyes, And I started working out that these guys were not just jumping out the water, that they were actually connecting with me. So they would jump out and make eye contact with me. Okay, but not like this. Okay, they can't do that. The one eye. Otherwise, they'd look a little bit stupid. And I started realizing that these guys were connecting with me, because if I wasn't on deck during that time, Alec, they would jump out the water and smack their bodies hard against the water, bam, 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 or swim up to my rudder and hit my rudder while I was in the cabin hard until I got out. Until I made eye contact with them, they wouldn't stop. And as soon as I got out on deck, they would stop. Now, it might just be me, and I may just be projecting, but I don't think I am, because this happened for the 6 weeks until the finish line. So from that storm, middle of the Atlantic, 6 weeks later, arrive in Antigua, and they're still underneath my boat, still doing exactly the same thing. I finished at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 6 o'clock that morning, I had my last swim with them. So 3 hours, I mean, I'm literally right next to the island. Had my last swim with them, and I said my goodbye. So every day for those 6 weeks, I would jump overboard when it got really, really hot, because it can get hot. And I'd swim with them, and they'd swim around me, and they'd just look at me as they swam around me. And sunrise, sunset, they would jump out the water, make eye contact with me.
Extraordinary story, and many of those.
Yeah.
Sure. Can't wait to hear more of them at the conference. But before we finish off this discussion,
Yes.
Your centenary race to the South Pole,
Yes.
2011, with another adventurer who's well known in South Africa, Bram Malherbe.
Yes.
How did that all come about?
So when I got back from the solo row with Kim, when I was on the quayside with Kim, I looked at Kim and I said, next time, if I ever say I want to do something like this again, Kim, you really got to stop me this time. And she said I would. Actually, when we got back to South Africa, she came up to me and she said, Pete, you owe me. And I said, of course, Kim, I owe you. You know, what's the story? She said, well, next expedition is mine. So I said, okay, fantastic. So she ran from our house here in East London to Mozambique along the coastline, a marathon a day. Ran. So a minimum of a marathon a day. And then mountain biked the inland borders of South Africa to a place called Blow Pits, which is just below Grabie's Falls. Got onto a kayak over to Alexandria Bay, the mouth. So that's the southern border of Namibia. And then put her running shoes back on and ran back to East London along the coast, 6,800 Ks.
How long?
4.5 months. 6,700, yeah.
Did you meet up with her along the road?
Yeah, so it was an amazing journey around South Africa. So I supported Kim, and we had our 5-year-old daughter. She turned 6 during that trip with us, Hannah. And then we had a gap year student, a super hardcore farm girl from East London. And so she was 18 and she came with us as well. And that was the team. And we met up with people, along the way that would either join Kim for, a little bit of the run or part of the mountain biking. And it was a spectacular journey. And Alec, I have to just tell you this, South Africa is a wonderful country. Obviously, we've got massive problems in many areas. And before we left, people would say to us, Pete, Kim, come on, you can't be serious. You can't go and do this. It's going to be too dangerous. These areas are too wild. Kim's going to get, accosted on the beaches, or, you guys are going to get hijacked, whatever. I want to tell you that when we got back from our trip, we were so almost pathologically inspired and positive about this country and its beautiful people. It just absolutely blew us away. The worst problem we had on the whole trip were vervet monkeys. Just stealing our food and stuff. But it was amazing. I'll never forget in Venda, this big chap coming up to us, and we had just got out of a little trading store, and we were having our little Cokes. Me and Kim, I was riding with Kim at the time, and he came and he took Kim's arm and he said, listen, what are you guys doing? And we went, okay, we're going to tell the story again. So we explained what we were doing, and he said, I want you to know that this place over here is my village. It's my people. And you are welcome here like my own brother and my own sister. So if you want to stay, and that's kind of the feeling that we had the whole way around South Africa. It was just amazing. But a guy called Bram Malherbe, you mentioned, phoned me. I was actually sitting on a little koppie, and I get this phone call, and he says to me, Pete, got an opportunity to go down to Antarctica to do a race to the South Pole to commemorate Scott and Amundsen's trip 100 years ago, so the centenary race to the pole. 888-kilometer race, unsupported, unassisted, to the South Pole. Do you want to do it with me? I said, Brahma, you nuts. Of course I want to do it with you. I mean, who in their right mind wouldn't? And but time was
Yeah.
quite, this is now, it was April, and we were leaving in December, so time, and I needed to finish the expedition first before I could start training. I'd never skied before, so I needed to learn how to ski. I needed to get acclimatized. There was so much stuff that we needed to do, but we put it all together. We went to the South Pole. There were 7 international teams taking part in the race. Only 3 finished, and Bram and I were one of those 3 teams. And it was another spectacular event, and an adventure of epic proportions with many, many, many stories to tell, which we don't have time for now. But, again, getting to the South Pole, raising the South African flag over that pole 100 years after the first people to get there, Amundsen and Scott 35 days later, was just such a privilege and honor for me,
It's quite appropriate that the Norwegians won it and the Brits were second. But the South Africans were nowhere when Amundsen and Scott were thinking of
Yeah,
100 years
exactly.
previously. So well done to you guys. But
Yeah,
but
thanks.
a theme that comes through in your book continuously is this idea of mind over matter,
Yeah,
and the power of the mind,
yeah.
the potential that we have as a species, as human
Mm.
beings.
It's something that's fascinated me, Alec, and it's a subject that I'm going to be speaking about at the conference. Are we uncapped human beings? I've always considered myself, and still consider myself, just to be an ordinary person. I don't have anything. I'm not one of those natural athletes. And I learned very quickly early on, and particularly just after I finished school, in my life, that anything that is noteworthy, worthy of telling a story, anything great that we want to achieve in life is going to have to be gotten through, suffering. There's definitely hard stuff that's going to happen to us, and our ability to overcome that is not a physical thing. And that the battles that we face are won and lost inside our heads. Let me give you an example of this. Rowing, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's day 50. You're on your own, you're sitting on a rowing boat, your hands are blistered and raw almost to the bone. You'll see pictures of it at the conference. Your backside has got boils or pressure sores on it. You won't see pictures of that at the conference. Those are for special friends. And at that time, there are thoughts going through your head. And for me, that 4 o'clock in the morning session was just the hardest. I'd think, it's physically impossible to row another 24 hours like this. Your mind starts playing tricks with you. The best thing that you can do right now is pull those oars in and go and sleep, and rest until the sun comes up. And then maybe get on the satellite phone and get somebody to come and, get you the hell out of there, passing ship. Because that's what you're doing, because that's what it feels like. We've all been there at that point in our lives where those voices start speaking to us. But what makes us change? What makes us go, okay, I need to finish this shift. I need to stick to that whole discipline thing, And I've realized that. So let me give you an example. So when I'm finished that rowing shift, so I'd finish it an hour and a half, and I'd go rest for an exactly hour and a half. And during that hour and a half, I would have that phone call. I would make that satellite phone call to Kim. Okay, so that was one of the treats that I looked forward to. So I'd speak to Kim after that last shift, that sun, just before the sun. The sun comes up, and I have breakfast. Those 3 things happen. The very next shift, I'm sitting back on that seat, and I'm rowing like a beast again, as if that 24 hours previously hadn't happened. And so what is the difference between that time and that 4 o'clock in the morning session 3 hours earlier or hour and a half earlier? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's been a chemical change in your mind, and there've been So, I mean, you hear things like mind over matter, and there's lots of cliched stuff around that we could speak about, but it is very real. We absolutely have control over how we handle things, internally. It's much easier to do that when you're faced by a challenge, as opposed to being faced by adversity. Adversity is very different to challenges, because challenges are self-imposed, mainly, generally speaking. So when I'm rowing, those things are challenges for me. Adversity is things like my doctor telling me I've got cancer, or somebody dying, or me breaking my leg during the row. Those are different kinds of things, and they also can be handled in your head, but it's a lot harder. So the Eighth Summit is really the book. The Eighth Summit is really about those 3 expeditions: the first row, second row, and South Pole. All the lessons that I've learned from that help me cope and help me deal with the struggles that we have internally inside our heads. And then also they are inspirational anecdotes and inspirational lessons on very basic universal laws that apply to us being able to take control over our minds. So the Eighth Summit, the 7 continents, climbers want to climb the highest peak on each continent. There's 7 of them, and the Eighth Summit is us. And I suppose that is probably one of the most important things that we can do in our lives, is really understanding that we have no limits. And that there are things that we can do and processes that we can put in place in our lives to make sure that we can achieve the things that we want to that we set out to achieve. Terms and conditions apply.
Also, in your book, you start each chapter with an inspirational quote. I have a little book somewhere where, when I come across a really interesting quote that I'd like to remember, I make a note of it. Do you have something similar? And what's your selection, or what was your selection process when you put the book together on which of those many quotes to use?
So, there's so many quotes when it comes to resilience and perseverance, and there's so many people that have written about it, from their own perspectives. And I suppose when I wrote the book, I just went on a bit of a mission to find the most pertinent ones. There have been ones that I've known for many, many years, and the one that sticks out for me the most is that Roosevelt quote. And
The
to give you a
arena.
little bit, I beg your pardon? Yeah, the arena
The
one.
arena.
And it's classic. I was doing a talk for Hertz a couple of years ago, when Joel Stransky was still a CEO. I don't know if you remember. He was still CEO, and I was sitting next to him at dinner, and afterwards, and he said to me, "Pete, you have no idea how that quote was such a pivotal part of their winning that famous World Cup where he did the drop kick." He said, because they were sitting in the change room at full time, and the coach, Keith Christie, if I remember correctly,
Kitch.
walked in.
Yeah, Kitch Christie.
Kitch Christie, yeah, walked in, and he said, "Boys," and he said he didn't say one other word except that quote. And then he walked out again. And that still gives me goosebumps today, because it's and if anybody's watching this, when they do, just go and have a look at that, the arena quote, Roosevelt. It is spectacular, and it's something that's resonated with me very deeply in my life, and has really helped me in tough times as well.
He talks there about the critics, those who are in the grandstand.
You want me to tell it to you? I
Always
know it off by
throwing.
heart.
Please.
Okay, so he says, "It's not the critic that counts, nor the man who points out where the strong man has stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to you, the man in the arena, whose face is marred by sweat and dust and blood, who knows great passions, who devotes himself to a worthy cause, so that in the end, if he succeeds, he does so with great triumph. But if he fails, he at least does so whilst daring greatly, so that his place, her place, will not be amongst the cold and timid souls who have neither known victory nor defeat."
Brilliant.
So, it's such an inspirational thing, because there are so many people that sit in their lives. They go to work every single day. They really hope that something great is going to happen. And obviously, it doesn't unless you make it happen. There's so many people that sit with such great aspirations for their lives, dreams, and hopes. And they don't get it together because they are worried about what happens if I can't. What are people going to think of me? That may be one of the things they think about. But that sense that it doesn't matter what happens if you just start the journey and you push and you do it. If you fail, just get up and be tenacious, be resilient. Resilience is all about recovering from failure, and then putting things in place to make sure that when you start again, you've covered that area and that you can get through it. So I think it's really inspired me. So I've had expeditions in my life where I've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and and every now and then something happens and you go a couple of steps backwards. But got to remember that when you are in the arena, that's the most important thing, and that's where we are going to be triumphant. Whether we fail, whether we get back up again and go, or whether we succeed, it doesn't matter. The credit belongs to those people.
A good place to end, but we're not going to end there, because you did mention in passing, perhaps a little earlier, that you're working on another adventure
Yes.
a couple of years hence. So what is next for Peter van Kets?
Okay, so I would like to do. I have one really big expedition I would still love to do, and been working on it quite hard, and that is a circumnavigation around the world on the Tropic of Capricorn, on land and sea, and it will be a naturally powered expedition. So that means wind powered over the sea. So I'll sail the ocean bits. It's 3 oceans: Indian, Atlantic, Pacific. It's 3 continents that I will trek, run, mountain bike, kayak, and paraglide. And that is Africa, South America, Australia, and Madagascar. So, one of the last great adventures that hasn't been done. I'm busy chatting to a guy called John Lucas at the moment from Explore for Knowledge, and we are hopefully going to hook up together, and he will come along as part of the journey to document stories that we can all learn from. More of a scientific approach to some of the stories we're going to tell, whether it's climate change or education around kids, or most old expeditions had a scientist or 2 that went with them and just did things, and that's what I would like to do with this expedition. So it has way more meaning than just Pete van Kets doing this expedition around the planet. It will have a much deeper scientific meaning than just that. So something very exciting. We're looking for sponsors at the moment. So and it's a big global expedition. It's going to take 14 months to do. Very exciting.
So it wouldn't exactly be around the world in 80 days, but it might be an update of Jules Verne's book,
Yes.
Around the World in 14 Months. My goodness.
Yeah.
And that's a couple of years of planning still into that.
So end of next year. So 2 years' time.
And how old will you be then?
I will be 56 years old.
Isn't that, some people would say, goodness, time to retire?
So, I don't ever perceive myself to be old, because I know some people keep thinking, Pete, hey, when are you going to stop? When are you going to stop? And when I think of myself, it's like I was when I did my first row. I don't see myself as any different. Physically, probably mentally a lot better. I'm still doing lots of big adventure races, which are super tough racing, and I'm keeping myself physically together, as much as possible. So when I did South Pole with Brahm, that was in 2011. He was 54 years old.
Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway, their official age of retirement is 103. and we've decided to adopt that at BizNews as well. So we're on the same page. Pete, look
Okay.
forward to seeing you in
Yeah.
the Berg at
Yes.
the end of March, and
Mm.
thanks again for sharing your story with us today.
Absolute pleasure, Alec. Thank you so much.